Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy and Nate. Today we are going to be discussing lingering severe weather that's not going to be all too significant, but will most likely impact your day here from now here on Monday, May 10th, all the way to Wednesday, May 11th. So if you guys are new to my channel, please be sure to subscribe to get more updates as to what all could be happening with the weather. I upload videos to the latter stages of every morning, as well as I do live streams for whenever severe weather does get impactful. So if you guys would like to see some stuff like that, please be sure to subscribe. Like the video so that I can get onto more people's recommended feeds so we can share this information to more people. And that would be greatly appreciated if you guys could do that. We also have timestamps here in the video, so you guys could be able to pick and choose which stuff you can specifically want to look for. So this right here, this is for today on Monday, May 10th. That's the convective outlook. I'm actually going to move my face over. So any of these areas here indicated in the dark green or the yellows, highly advise you all to watch my watch that segment there of Monday. This is Tuesday. Not really that much of a change besides Carolinas kind of get out of the risk. So once again, if you're in the dark green, highly advise you all to watch out for this. I didn't really do a whole lot. Didn't have a good picture for southeastern Georgia and northern Florida, but I'll try and do the best I can to give you all as to what all is happening, or give you all an idea. And then we also have a general thunderstorm risk here, so if you want to just see what the max temperatures could be for Wednesday, then that would be fine too. But here, let's take a look at what's happening today. This is day one convective outlook issued by the Storm Prediction Center. You can see here we have our dark greens, which would be a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, and our yellows, which would be a 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. So the dark green is a marginal risk, and the yellow is a slight risk. So wherever you live here, you have that, you have that chance of getting severe weather within your general vicinity. Our hail outlook, our 5% chance for hail is indicated in brown. Our 15% chance for hail is indicated in yellow. So whatever probability you have, that is your chance of seeing 1-inch size hail or larger within a 25-mile radius. So if you live within that general vicinity, you have to watch out for that. You also have this pesky hatch risk right here. This black circle with the dotted lines in it. That could also indicate that you could also have a 10% chance or greater of seeing 2-inch size hail or larger, and that could do significant damage. Easily damage cars, break windows, and it could easily hurt people or even pets outdoors. So I'd highly advise being indoors whenever storm and thunder roars within your general vicinity. You also have your wind outlook here, 15% here in North Carolina, as well as your 15% here near Del Rio and San Antonio. The rest is a 5% surrounding areas. So if you live over there, I'd advise you all to take proper precautions. Whatever probability you have, that is your chance of seeing 58-mile-per-hour wind gusts or above within 25 miles of a point. Not a major tornado risk here today, so I probably won't live stream this. But we still have the chance for tornadoes here in North Carolina, as well as here in the deep south. So if you guys live in any of these 2%, you'd have a non-zero chance for tornadoes, but it's a very low chance for tornadoes here today, so that is the good news. All right, let's get into some of the timings here. This is for the Carolinas first. Usually I favor people in the deep south and in Texas, but I decided we're going to change it up here today to favor some of the people who live in the Carolinas and in Georgia. So we'll move on through here. This is the HRRR. The timings here for you all, for you smart people. Well, not exactly smart people, but for people who know how to convert universal time to Eastern time, it's going to be up there, but I'm going to try and walk you guys through as to what time this is happening and all. So pay attention very closely. Right around the 8 o'clock, not the 8 o'clock, geez, the 2 o'clock hours here in the afternoon. Got some scattered showers that are here in southeastern parts of Virginia, and more storms will begin to form along this line as it gets towards like Charlotte, all the way up towards the north and east. And so that'll really consolidate more into a line and really start to form on through. You also have some lingering showers here in Atlanta, going all the way through, not exactly into the Augusta region quite yet, but Greenville could potentially see some things in that general vicinity as well. that'll continue to move on and linger as some scattered showers here in Georgia. But you can see here in North Carolina, a lot more intense for the most part, a lot more robust thunderstorms that are most likely going to occur here. And so as that continues to move on through, places like Raleigh could be impacted, places like Fayette could be impacted later on. This is right around the 8 o'clock hours. And this is definitely something that we're going to want to watch out for. But as it continues to head further east and heading off into the overnight hours, the thunderstorms actually do deplete. So that is the good news here with all this. Your in-depth analysis here of the storms, we're going to take a look at the dew points here. You can see in these yellows are 60s and above for the most part. And so that's usually when it starts to get relatively moist in the atmosphere. You can feel the mugginess in general. And so that's typically what you want to see for thunderstorms to be possible. More moisture you have, the higher chance that your supercells could most likely sustain. So you have your moisture aspect here. But the only issue with this is that even though you might have moisture, there may not be enough energy to actually support strong supercells within this general vicinity. And if we take a look at the convective available potential energy, which is just basically the measure of the warm air rising in the atmosphere and the cold air sinking, the greater displacement between the two can indicate more energy, more instability in the atmosphere for thunderstorms to be able to intensify and actually become strong. But you need at least 2,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE in order for you to be able to get strong thunderstorms. So we're looking at the convective available potential energy, or CAPE, amounts for this general area here in the Carolinas. And these dark greens indicate these 1,000 joules per kilogram. These yellows indicate about 2,000 joules per kilogram, even into the oranges. That's right around 2,500. So you can see not a whole lot of CAPE across the board here. And so there's not really going to be a whole lot of energy for these thunderstorms to really intensify and be significant. Our wind shear here, for the most part, is actually pretty decent. This is the reason why we have a strong gusty wind threat here for the Carolinas. Notice how our low-level jet is coming from the west, and so it is moving almost due west here for the most part. It's moving east-northeast for the most part. Moving from the due west, I should say. And so really strong wind shear here at the lower levels. You can see that we have it in upwards of 25 to almost, well, 20 to almost 25 knots. That would be 25 to 30 miles per hour here at the 850 millibar jet, which for people who are curious, it's about 1 kilometer up in the sky. So you do have some decent wind shear here with this storm. With this storm system at the lower levels. If we take a look at the upper levels, you can see it's moving in about the same direction. The upper level wind shear at 700, well, actually mid-level wind shear, I should say. It's in the upper levels, but it's more or less the mid-level jet, 700 millibar wind shear, which is about 3 kilometers up in the sky. And the winds are moving in the same direction. It's coming from the west. You don't have a lot of veering, which could indicate, massive supercell potential that could produce tornadoes. We don't see that here today. So it's more or less going to be a gusty wind threat, but you could easily see a quick spin up in and along a thunderstorm if it could potentially ingest inflow and be able to sustain. So you still have the moisture there in the general vicinity. You don't have a lot of CAPE. You have a lot of wind shear, which could indicate that this could be more or less a gusty wind threat and not as much of a tornado threat. All right, let's take a look at the timings here for Del Rio and San Antonio, that general vicinity. You can see here, this is towards the noon hours here. This is a 16Z, that's around noon Eastern, so it's 11 Central. And as that continues to move on through, you can see there is some lingering showers and thunderstorms here across the Dallas-Fort Worth area, even further higher up towards Paris. So there is some lingering showers and thunderstorms here. But not all too much. That's going to be more or less kind of your passing showers. But the one thing that we're looking at is these showers over here in Mexico, just to the south and west of Del Rio. And that's what is really going to cause some issues for some of these areas around southern parts of Texas. And so these thunderstorms, as I mentioned, could produce some large hail in upwards of 2 inches, maybe even 2.5 inches in some spots. So definitely something we're going to be mindful of as this continues to head off towards San Antonio. Whether or not these thunderstorms will actually make it there, Most of these models actually say that it will mainly stay away from the San Antonio general vicinity, but I actually think that you could potentially get a rogue thunderstorm that can move on through, potentially do some hail, well, produce some hail, I should say. Not some large, significant hail, but I do think that you guys could see a rogue thunderstorm that could linger into that general vicinity. So definitely something that we're going to want to be mindful of as this moves on through. If we take a look at our in-depth analysis here, our dew points, relatively moist here for the most part in the southern parts of Texas. You can see how here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's relatively modest. It's below 60, so it's a more or less comfortable outside. You want those 40s to 50 degree dew points outside, in my honest opinion, or at least that's what I think is more or less comfortable. I'm not sure about you all, but that's right around the comfortable dew point temperatures. Once you start to get into the yellows and the oranges and stuff like that, that's when you need to, that's when it starts to feel pretty muggy outside. And especially in some of these oranges here that indicate up to the 70s, that is really moist here. So got high dew points here within southern parts of Texas, even into Louisiana. You can see how there's even some parts of oranges over here. If we take a look at our convective available potential energy, as I said, it's the warm air rising and the cold air sinking. The displacement between the two indicates how much energy is in the atmosphere. So if there's a bigger displacement, there's more energy, more fuel for thunderstorms to be able to intensify and become strong. So as I said, you would want around 2,000 joules per kilogram in order to consider strong storms. That would be in the yellows. And we have some that are above the yellows. We actually have some in the reds, even into the purples, and even into the whites. That actually indicates about 5,000 joules per kilogram CAPE. So we have a plethora amount of energy here within this setup near Del Rio and near San Antonio. Our maximum amount of CAPE, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, actually says that you have about 5,300 joules per kilogram at maximum within this general vicinity. And so a lot of energy here for the most part with these storms here in southeastern parts of Texas. If we take a look at our wind shear here, though, this is our low-level jet, and it's really modest for the most part. I'm not going to lie. There's not a whole lot here to look for. You do have veering winds, so your low-level jet comes from the south. You can see how this, moves from the bottom to the top. From these arrows, you can see the little indentations of the arrows right here inside the actual lines. So these are indicating that winds are coming from the south. And we do have winds here near Del Rio that's actually coming from the south and east. So there's some decent wind shear here for the most part. It's not as intense as the Carolinas by any stretch of the imagination. The actual strength of this is about 10 to 15 knots, which is about 15 to 20 miles per hour. And we're looking up about 1 kilometer up in the sky. So it's not exactly a very strong low-level jet, but there is a low-level jet here within this general vicinity. If you take a look at our mid-level, or actually, I'm sorry, we're going to take a look at our upper-level jet here, which is at 500 millibars. So we're looking up 6 kilometers up in the sky here, and you can see that there is a bit of veering. You can see these winds are coming from the west. And so what I talk about with veering is I talk about veering winds with height. And so if we go back to how the winds were just a second ago, the low-level jet, you can see how the winds were coming from the south. But then they kind of veer off into now you have winds in the upper level parts of the atmosphere that actually come from the west. So with that veering, you could potentially get some supercellular development, maybe even the chance for something to become tornadic. But because the risk is mainly down here into Del Rio and into San Antonio, and there's not a lot of CAPE here in this environment near Oklahoma and Texas, the wind shear here in Del Rio and San Antonio is pretty minimal. You actually want around 40 to 45 knots of wind shear here, and we have most of this in the light blues and in the dark blues, and that is under that. You typically want to look for these greens to be indicative of sustaining supercells that could be tornadic. And that's not what we see here at all. So just by this analysis here, I can safely determine that most of these storms are going to be high precipitation based. You're not going to be able to really see a whole lot if you're chasing, more or less. And it's really going to be one of those things to where It's going to be very messy. There's going to be a lot of rain, not going to have a lot of organization, but there's definitely going to be some large amounts of hail due to the fact that you have a lot of cape here in this general vicinity. So not all the time does it mean that you have a lot of cape. It doesn't mean that you have tornadoes. You still need to have wind shear. You still need to have it to be relatively decent. It has to actually be acceptable rather than just present. And for people who are curious as to what all is happening here in the Deep South, because you guys did see that tornado risk, the 2% tornado risk here in the Deep South. You can see that there's a widespread amount of thunderstorms here that are lingering from yesterday's event that moved on through Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, and even parts of Texas. And so you do have those thunderstorms that kind of linger here into the southern parts of Louisiana, into the Biloxi, Mississippi, even into the Mobile, Alabama general vicinity. But those thunderstorms are forecasted to kind of move away, and so not really too much to say here based off of that. All right, I'm going to move my face over so that I don't block California here. Who knew that my face was that large? But here's the high temperatures. According to the National Weather Service, this is their prediction for the high temperatures here today. And so the numbers indicate more or less what your temperature is in Fahrenheit. You can see across the board here, for the most part, places like the Northeast all the way down to, say, the Central Plains have some really comfortable temperatures. Even up into parts of the Northwest, you can see, for the most part, the entire United States is covered in either upper 60s all the way down to more or less the low 50s. There is some spots that spike into the 40s and even below freezing near the Rocky Mountains. But for the most part, if you're in the central part of the United States and further north than that, you have some really comfortable temperatures across the board here. You also have Florida. Florida's going to Florida for the most part with its temperatures in upwards of the 90s in some spots. You also have the desert here, which is still desert temperatures. Even places near Sacramento down towards LA, although LA surprisingly is getting temperatures around the 70s. Some other areas that are just to the west of the Sierras are getting into the temperatures in upwards of the 90s. So there is some decent amounts of temperature, warm, hot temperatures within that general vicinity. So we're definitely going to want to be mindful for all of that. All right, let's talk about our day 2 outlook here. This is on Tuesday, May 11th. And a marginal risk has been issued here for southern parts of the country. This marginal is a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, so we're not expecting anything super significant here, although we could anticipate some localized severe weather within some parts of the Deep South. And we'll get into that here in a second. But going into our hail risk, a 5% chance for hail within this general vicinity. So that probability is indicative of you seeing 5% chance of you seeing 1-inch size hail or larger within a 25-mile radius. You also have a 5% chance of seeing 58-mile-per-hour wind gusts or larger within a 25-mile radius, and indicated in this brown. Notice how it did shrink. So places near like Wichita Falls and Childress, as well as I believe Lubbock was in it. I can't exactly recall as to whether or not Lubbock was in it or not. It was kind of right in the border. Maybe a little bit further north of the actual risk, but definitely places near Wichita Falls, south of Wichita Falls, near Abilene. Abilene's definitely out of the risk. Dallas-Fort Worth is out of the risk. Texarkana is out of the risk for the most part in regards to this wind risk. But areas that I did mean that were more or less localized for severe weather, there is a 2% chance for tornadoes here in the Deep South. Southeastern parts of Texas, central to southern parts of Louisiana, even into eastern parts of Louisiana, and southern parts of Mississippi into extreme southern parts of Alabama, more or less southwestern parts of Alabama. There is the threat for tornadoes. I personally think that this could be extended a bit further north into places like Monroe and Shreveport. I think the 2% chance for tornadoes could be extended a bit further north into that general vicinity. And you'll see why here in a couple of seconds with the models as this continues to move on through. But definitely a chance for tornadoes, a non-zero chance for tornadoes within this general vicinity here in the Deep South. We'll take a look at the simulated radar here. We'll get some timings here for you all. As I said, this is the timings here in Zulu. So if you can convert Zulu time to not Eastern, Central Daylight Time, then the timing is always up there. But I'm going to try and walk you guys through as to what I'm looking at and when this is occurring. So this is around midday, right around noon. A little bit before noon, actually, is when this is actually taking place. A lot of scattered storms here for the most part into Louisiana and into central parts of Mississippi. You also have some lingering thunderstorms that are over in Alabama, but I'm not anticipating that to be significantly severe at this moment. But you can see how these storms continue to progress, and by late afternoon into the early evening hours, these storms really start to become very much so widespread. And you can see how most of the action is actually on the northern parts of Louisiana, and so that's kind of the reason why I'm anticipating that they could extend the 2% chance for tornadoes a bit further up to there. But this line does start to consolidate more, and does impact the areas that could more or less see the actual main threat of severe weather down here towards places like Alexandria, all the way down to Hattiesburg, all the way down to Gulfport, and even we could be talking about Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and even places near New Orleans. They could be seeing some severe weather, but this will be more or less after the evening hours into the overnight hours. Right around 9 o'clock is when you guys could start anticipating some storms, give or take. It could happen a little bit before, it could happen a little after. So you'll just have to prepare for the most part. And even areas around Pensacola and Mobile is not spared by this event at all. The potential for some severe weather exists around 10 o'clock and even the 11 o'clock hours. And some lingering showers will be over here in Georgia, but I don't anticipate that to be all too significant for you all. So you guys should be all right for the most part. Your in-depth analysis here of this event, we're taking a look at the dew points here. As I said, the yellows is more or less going to be your relatively muggy temperatures. Yellows and above into your oranges is really muggy, so that's 60-degree dew points and above. You can see these oranges are actually 70-degree dew points, so you got dew points up in the 70s here in southern parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. And so really moist here for the most part within this within the deep south here on Tuesday. Your convective available potential energy, or CAPE as I like to call it, as I said, it's the warm air rising and the cold air sinking. The more displacement between the two indicates the more energy, the more instability there is in the atmosphere for thunderstorms to be able to fuel themselves, sustain, and even develop. And so this is exactly what we're looking at right here, the amount of energy that is in the atmosphere. You typically want over 2,000 joules per kilogram, which is indicated in the yellow. You actually have over that, some of these reds, and even getting into the purples, which is indicating about 4,000 joules per kilogram. The reds are about 3,000 joules per kilogram and above. And so right within that general vicinity, you have a lot of energy here that is in Louisiana, Texas, and even into Mississippi. So we're definitely going to have to watch out for this as this continues to unfold further. I'm most likely going to upload another video tomorrow morning to update you all as to what all is happening. But we still have the chance for severe weather here in southern parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, and even Alabama. Let's take a look at our low-level jet here, 850 millibar jet, which is looking up about 1 kilometer up in the sky. We have a really decent low-level jet here across Louisiana. You can notice how we have winds coming out from the south and west. So we have, we can anticipate that there could be a little bit of veering in the atmosphere with this. We'll have to take a look at our mid-level jet here at 700 millibars here in a second. But decent low-level jet here. And upwards of 20 to 25, even almost 30 knots of wind shear here. That's around 25 to 35 miles per hour. And that's actually pretty good for a low-level jet here. You know, it's not like the best in the world, but it's preferred for whatever severe weather you would want to see, especially some tornadic potential with it, within this general vicinity. We'll take a look at our mid-level jet here, 700 millibar jet, which is looking up about 3 kilometers up in the sky, and you do have a bit of veering here. Winds are now starting to come out a bit more from the west. It's more of a west-southwest component here, So there is a bit of veering within this general vicinity, and the stronger wind shear is actually a bit further north into Louisiana. So if there's any thunderstorms that can actually form within that general vicinity, they could probably have the highest chance of becoming tornadic, but they'd have to become supercellular first. And so we're definitely going to have to be mindful of all of that. And because more of the energy is a bit more towards the southern parts of Louisiana, the chances of this is minimal. But if there is something to happen here, you can definitely get a quick spin up within the actual thunderstorm. So the chances for tornadoes is possible there as well. But regardless, you still have the chance for tornadoes within the 2% vicinity as well, because you have decent wind shear here too. We're going to take a look at the high temperatures here for Tuesday. And you can see for the most part, it's kind of the same story here. The Northeast actually gets a little bit cooler. Same with the Ohio River Valley into the Great Lakes. That actually gets a little bit cooler. But for the most part, it's actually relatively tame. You can see temperatures are relatively comfortable for the places like the Plains, into the Ozarks, even into the Midwest, as people like to call it. But the one thing that is starting to heat up is the Northwest here and the Southwest as well. Places in California, into the desert, all the way up into the Sierras, and even into the Northwest, places like Seattle and even Portland, Oregon. You guys are starting to heat up. You're no longer in the low 70s and even into the upper 60s. You're now into more or less the 70s in some of these general vicinities. And even places west of the Sierras, you guys are still experiencing 90-degree temperatures. And LA, Los Angeles is actually starting to experience some temperatures in the 70s as well. So a bit of a warm-up for you guys that is expected here on Tuesday. We'll take a look at Wednesday's outlook here. Some general thunderstorms for the most part. This kind of light green indicates a 0 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, but I don't really like to call it a 0 out of 5. I just like to call it, a general thunderstorm risk, more or less. That's what it's supposed to be. That's how they actually represent it. But general thunderstorm risk here for the most part within this general vicinity, even includes parts of Florida. And so you guys, although Florida typically does see thunderstorms typically every day, so what else is new? Florida is going to really Florida, isn't it? So the chances for severe weather is possible across the board here. We're going to zoom out and we're going to show you all what exactly is happening on a larger scale. We're going to look at a lower resolution model. This is the NAM model. Typically, sometimes we look at the NAM 3K, but as of right now, because none of the mid-range models really go out this far besides the NAM, this is all we really can use. So you can see that there is some lingering snow showers here in Colorado into the Rockies in some of these areas. But some severe weather will linger here in the deep south, even into Texas. So I can't rule out the potential chance for some thunderstorms across Dallas-Fort Worth, down into Austin, even into San Antonio, even some places here in Oklahoma, down into Arkansas, and even into the deep south. You guys could even get some severe weather by around 7 o'clock. We actually have a consolidated line that starts to move on through, and so Corpus Christi could potentially get into the action, as well as some areas along the coast. Maybe even Houston might even get some thunderstorms as well, but it doesn't seem to be all too significant. And these thunderstorms will really push on through into Alabama, Mississippi, and even Georgia and towards the midnight hours. So we're really going to have to watch out for that, but nothing too significant to really watch out for to begin with. Our high temperatures here for Wednesday across the board, starting to get a lot cooler here towards the Carolinas, starting to get into the 60s. Even places here into the southern plains actually start to get into the 60s. So it really is kind of a cool down for the most part across much of the U.S. Florida is still going to Florida, so nothing is new there. Areas close to the coast are more or less going to be still in the upper 70s, mid to upper 70s. So that's not really going to change a whole lot. But what is changing here is these temperatures in the western part of the country. I mean, look at this. Some temperatures up in the 80s here in Washington State. Some areas here in Seattle actually have it in the 60s, but there is still areas that could potentially get up into the 80s. Some of these areas here in Arizona, around the Grand Canyon into Death Valley, get into the 90s, even into triple digits in some of these spots. And so really hot here for the most part, really dry for the most part. And so it's just basically the tale of two stories for the most parts. One side, or much of the country, is relatively warm and comfortable. The other side is too warm, if you will, relatively hot and dry. And so definitely something we're going to have to watch out for the potential fire risk. But for the most part, if you live in much of the United States here, you can see how the temperatures are relatively modest, relatively tame here for the United States. Last thing I want to do is I want to real quickly, talk to you guys about the people who have supported the channel as a sponsor. So all these channel members here, thank you guys so much for sponsoring the channel. Whether you tune into my live streams or you watch my videos every single day, I just want to say I appreciate you all, so thank you so much. And if you want to become a sponsor, feel free to do so. Just click that join button that would be right next to the subscribe button. That would be greatly appreciated. So speaking of the subscribe button, if you guys haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. Like the video so that this can get onto more people's recommended pages. That would be greatly appreciated. Share this video with friends and family and on social media so that I may be able to get all sorts of information out to you all and to the people who may need it. That would be greatly appreciated as well. Also follow me on social medias like Twitter. I have a Discord in the description down below. There's a link to that, so if you want to do so, feel free to join. But that's going to be it for me for the most part. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. I'll catch you in the next video that I upload. So peace out, everyone.